perception check is one of the most common rolls you're going to make in Pathfinder 2nd Edition, and your perception is totally based upon what senses you have. My name is Don. I'm trying to be the Sly Strategist, and let's go ahead and get into senses a little bit. A character is going to have basically 3 types of senses, with a 4th category that we'll talk about as well. You're going to have precise senses, you're going to have imprecise senses, and you're going to have vague senses. These could be kind of thought of as vision would be a precise sense, your hearing would be an imprecise sense, and something like scent would be a vague sense. Now, these senses allow you to make a creature or an object or something along those lines into one of 3 different categories. They can be observed for detection, they can be hidden for detection, or they could be undetected for detection. These particular categories allow you to notice what's around you, notice things that are coming up, notice creatures that are around you are coming up, creatures that might be behind a door or hidden around a column. So your senses are very important into what you do as a player and what you do within your campaign. So let's go ahead and get a little bit more into it, and we'll start with precise senses. When we're talking precise senses, it is generally the only type of sense that you have that doesn't have a drawback. And by drawback, we mean that it gets you to the highest level of detection or detected. Vision, even average vision that a character or a creature might have, is the one precise sense. Now, if there are a character build or something along those lines that doesn't have vision or has poor vision, then you can work it out with your GM on what your precise sense would be. And in that case, it would need to be noted, like the range of it or what limitations that particular sense might have. But in general, vision is the one precise sense that most creatures are determined to have within the Pathfinder system. Usually, you can detect a creature automatically with a precise sense. In other words, if you're walking into a room or into a cave in a dungeon, and you see the creature, you immediately know exactly where that creature is and what that creature is. If the creature is hidden or maybe obstructed by something in the room, you can use a seek action in order to try to find the creature. It is a single action, and it allows you to basically find a little bit more. This particular video isn't about seek, but it is something that you would use in order to increase the level of detection when you are trying to find something. Now let's talk about imprecise senses. Now, hearing is an imprecise sense. It is generally assumed that that is the imprecise sense that a creature is going to have. Once again, if the build requires something a little bit different, then it's just something that you would need to work out with the GM, or the creature will have a designation on what their imprecise sense might be. Like it could be scent for a wolf, let's say. So you can usually sense a creature with an imprecise sense, but the character or the creature would have a hidden condition in that case. So they're detected, but they're hidden. It's not necessarily that precise. If you want to think of it this way, think of a creature on the other side of a door talking to another creature, and you can hear the rumbling in the background. Or if you were walking down a hallway and you hear the sound of a sword being drawn, you haven't, at least up to that point, you haven't seen that creature, but you do know that creature's around, but it's not something that you could target at that particular moment. So it would be considered hidden. Now, stealth for hearing, it might cause a creature to still remain undetected. And there are also situations where you can't really use hearing for detection. Let's say you're in a noisy room or you're in a very echoey cave system and you just can't pin down where a particular creature, monster, or object is. Basically, you would have to use the seek action once again in order to get a more precise, to elevate it in the level of detection in order to make it detected once you find something with an imprecise sense. But an imprecise sense can only make an unobserved creature hidden. It cannot actually raise it to the observed level. Precise senses are really the only one that can instantly make something observed. Now let's talk about vague senses. So characters have many vague senses, but by far the most common is going to be scent. Now, as stated in those other two categories, if you have a specific creature, once again, like a wolf or an animal with really highly developed sense of scent, then vague sense can be moved up to imprecise based on what that particular creature's description is. So a vague sense can alert you that something is there. In other words, you might smell the dampness of a monster, like a wet fur, think of a wet dog smell or something like that, but you can't very specifically point out where it is. You just know that it is present or it has been present. So it is a vague sense of something going on. And at best, you can detect the presence of an unnoticed creature, making it undetected. And that would be the best that you can get with a vague sense. Now, when we're talking about these different levels of senses, there's kind of a sense priority. Generally speaking, the GM is going to use or call for you to use the most precise sense. So if you have sight and hearing, in other words, if you can see and hear the creature, generally speaking, your perception roll will be based on sight. If you have heard the creature and you can kind of smell it in the room, you're probably not going to use smell. You're more than likely going to use your hearing for your perception roll, or at least for determining the DC class of the roll. So let's not say, I don't think it'd modify the perception roll precisely itself. It would just change the DC or the difficulty class of that particular roll. And you can think of this priority this way. Let's say you are looking for a creature, and I'm going to use the Muffin Man. So let's say you're trying to find the Muffin Man in a bakery that bakes muffins, and it looks exactly like everything else. So although you might be able to see the Muffin Man, you can also see every other muffin in that particular bakery. So what you would do is you would then move to your hearing, because you could hear it moving around, even though you might not be able to detect it within the greater range of all the muffins on the shelves. Or maybe that particular muffin smells different. Maybe it smells rotten because it is a rotten creature. Then you would use that vague sense in order to try and detect the Muffin Man. So your priority is generally always going to go to whatever sense has the most precision. Now, this shouldn't exclude creative use of senses within the game, especially for role play or for character development or creation, and let the character kind of play what they want to play. So, in general, Pathfinder is going to assume that vision is the creature's precise sense, that hearing is the imprecise sense. But if there is a case where a player character wanted to use something else as a precise sense, or maybe the creature doesn't have eyes. Well, in that case, specifically for the creature side of it, there will be examples used for what that precise, imprecise, or vague sense is, and it'll kind of denote what the limitations are. For example, and the example in the book are echolocation. It might say echolocation precise, and therefore it lets you know that echolocation is the precise sense for that particular creature. Think of a bat. Or it might have scent imprecise, and the range of it would be 30 feet. So you can elevate a sense from a lower category to a higher category. You just need to define what those are. And in some cases, it's specifically delineated in the creature description on what those senses are. So it's just something to keep in mind. And once again, it is fully up to the GM discretion. But I do think creative use of senses kind of could make it a little bit more fun and give you a little bit more depth to the character, depending on what the player wants to do. So aside from the precise, imprecise, and vague senses, there are also a category of senses called special senses. And think of these as senses that are not the normal senses, but they allow a creature to ignore or reduce the effect of conditions like concealed conditions that would make a character undetected, hidden, or concealed. And they kind of give a particular character greater depth. Echolocation might be considered one of those, but the most common ones that you'll see have to do with vision, and that would be dark vision and low light vision. Dark vision allows a creature to see in total darkness. And in the case of greater dark vision, it allows them to see through some spells that allow for magical darkness. So those would be considered special senses. And even low light vision is a special sense to allow a character or creature to see in low light. Scent, as mentioned before, with a creature like a wolf or some other creature that has a highly developed sense of smell, it can be elevated from a vague to an imprecise, but it just needs to be delineated in the character or creature description. And then another good one that you'll see is tremor sense. Tremor sense allows the creature to feel the vibrations on a solid surface, and it can be used as a imprecise or maybe in some cases even a precise sense. But the one limitation of that is you would have to be on the same surface in order to actually see it or use it as a precise or imprecise sense. So there are many special senses that can be used, and it's just something to be aware of when you're reading your creature descriptions. Now, I do hope you found this video interesting and maybe it taught you something new or reminded you of something that you had forgotten. I do hope you liked it. And if you did, feel free to like, subscribe, or hit that notification bell. But even if you don't, I hope you have a great day and happy adventuring. Thanks.